once again, to cite David Frum, he has this saying that the GOP fears its base and the Democrats resent their base. And because the Democrats resent their base, particularly they're heavily dependent upon the Black vote to turn out, they're quite susceptible to GOP blandishments to punish their base, such as putting them in jail so that they have felonies hanging around their neck, which means that they're not allowed to vote, putting them disproportionately on death row, et cetera, which obviously means they can't vote either. And once again, I think that it's important to bring this out because it seems to me, if we're speaking to younger people and people who are entering this system rather shortly, they have to have some sort of historical understanding of how we got to this point. Otherwise, I think we're doing them a disservice. And even Francis Fukuyama, I guess you could call him a Cold War analyst, recall his dancing on the grave of the socialist countries with this end of history theme. That is to say, there is no alternative to capitalism. Neoliberalism is the way to go, own up to it. But in this latest film on Thomas Piketty, the French intellectual, in his book, Capital in the 21st Century, he concedes that one of the reasons that the capitalist countries like the United States began to move towards reform was because of fear of socialism. I mean, that's clear with regard to the New Deal reforms of the 1930s, which we're still enjoying so far, speaking of unemployment compensation, Social Security, which is keeping people from eating dog food as we speak. And certainly with regard to the agonized retreat from the egregious forms of Jim Crow in the 1950s, I mean, the State Department in its brief in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, which creates what I call the compromise of 1954, whereby on the one hand, there'd be these anti-Jim Crow concessions that are wrested away, but at the same time, you have to throw overboard Paul Robeson, W.E.B. Du Bois, et cetera, which obviously, once again, restricts ideological space and leaves us in this pickle where we're now in. But at the same time, because labor education is hampered, because labor radicals likewise are deep-sixed and jettisoned, there's not the kind of labor education to explain adequately to a significant percentage, particularly of the Euro-American working class, what's going on. And so it's easy for them to be convinced that the ruling class yields to the Negroes, but doesn't care about them because, of course, at the same time, wages are being cut, working conditions are worsening, et cetera. And so oftentimes they experience this epochal change as a way to unleash further competition, not only in the working class, but in the middle strata. That's part of the problem we've had in New York, for example, which I think wrongly has been mischaracterized as some sort of Black-Jewish conflict.
Right.
The same thing happens with regard to another epochal change, that is to say, Nixon and Kissinger's trip to China, which is part of the encirclement of the Soviet Union. The payoff to China, of course, this massive foreign direct investment that ultimately might have amounted to the trillions. And then, of course, China wages war on Vietnam as part of the bargain as well. Still very tense relations between China and Vietnam, these two so-called communist countries, which is complicating the life of the peace movement as we speak. And once again, because there's not adequate explanation of what's going on, it's easy for a demagogue like the Manhattan Mussolini, the Tangerine Man, the oaf in the Oval Office, to convince all too many that the problem is China. As a matter of fact, we have a sort of a trifecta of the crisis of white supremacy. On the one hand, there's these killings of Black people in the streets and sort of the counter-reaction with the Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys and all the counter-protests. In USA Today the other day, they mentioned that from May till recently, there have been 100 different vehicular attacks on protesters. Of course, some of them have led to deaths, such as in Seattle, Tacoma. So that's one aspect. And then, of course, Mr. Trump in 2018 tried to raise the specter of people crossing the border, the so-called brown scare, who are coming across the border to take your jobs. And then the third leg of the stool is China. So you have this trifecta of racial anxiety. And because labor education is inadequate, because of the routing of the left during the Cold War and the Red Scare, it's easy for these poisonous ideas to take root. And then that leads us to this present crisis and moment. And I think people know this sort of thing, but I just think that they need to explain it, because many of us, including myself, who knows how long we're going to be around. So people need to explain to the younger people how we reach this point of crisis. And it simply won't do just to say, vote Democrat. You should say, vote Democrat with a lengthy footnote.
Right. Vote Democrat, asterisk. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I know that Dr. Horne, the reason we know that you're going to stay around for so long, in part, is besides the fact that you write about one book a year, it seems like, is because they stick to a good sleep schedule. I need to work on my sleep hygiene.
Early to rise.
Yeah, I got to do that. I'm kind of the opposite. But thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Horne. And can I call you Boxer Hedges?
Yeah, that was 40 years. That was 40 years ago.
But it's like when you're president, you never stop.
Okay, all right.
And thank you so much, Chris Hedges, for joining us. This is such an honor. Yeah, and definitely come back again.
Thank you.
Please.
Good night. Good night, Charles.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Okay,
So this trifecta, this very good trifecta.